So what happened in the last 4 or 5 years that has fundamentally reversed that trend? What happened was that a public-private partnership was born, which included business, governments, and civil society. Clearly, governments, through the Global Fund or the World Bank, or through its bilateral programs, were the main instrument of financing what is needed to provide these bed nets and these medicines. Civil society was instrumental in mobilizing the community health workers that can make effective this intervention. But I will also have to tell you that it was business that was able to put together, bring its skills in terms of supply chain management, in terms of creative financing, in terms of project management, leadership on the ground, that really got those resources mobilized to make sure that 100 million bed nets gets distributed, that they actually get to the right place, that they actually are used, and then, of course, the distribution of ACTs through every corner, much like you can find a bottle of Coca-Cola in every little village you can go in Africa. It is those skills that made it possible to bring known cures and really start making an impact and a difference to that problem. Today, in many environments, we have malaria deaths that have been cut in half. The battle is clearly not won, but all I want to illustrate is that it's only when all these three sectors work together can you actually make an impact. Another example that I am personally privy to is an issue that is looming and is untackled, will have an extraordinarily negative impact. And what I'm talking about here is the world's movement towards urban centers. Urbanization may not be a huge problem in this country, but if you look at what has been happening in China and what I know from personal experience in India, and I'll talk to you about India for a minute, is that today it's 30% urban. It is moving to 50% urban within the next 20 years. That means 300 million people will move from villages to cities. Today in India, 30% of the population, urban population, lives under $1 a day. 30% of the population lives in urban slums. If you don't intervene, this is going to go to at least 50%. I don't know how many of you have been in urban slum environments. Urban slum environments are the worst environments of any dimension, whether it be health, whether it be security, whether it be jobs, whether it be education, you name it. They are terrible environments, and they destabilize society. So what has to be done? I don't think the government can alone solve this problem. We have to work, the government, the civil society, and business to work together. It's very, very simple if you can do work together. Because one of the things that I find, for example, just to extend that example, in urban environments, municipalities, they say municipalities don't have any resources. Actually, they do. They have very valuable land that can be freed up, and you have to monetize that land resource. You have to build low-cost, affordable housing for the slum dwellers. You have to, at the same time, build an urban transportation infrastructure. You have to provide municipal services in a corporatized business way, not just a government department providing some services, so that there is the right kind of incentives and motives to do it. And you have to surround that with the right kind of governance, because today in India, there is very little municipal governance. I just illustrate these two examples to say that these are the kinds of things that we as business needs to come up and provide the skills and capabilities we have to make these solutions work. I also say, stepping back, while tapping these expertise in the types of problems I'm talking about will, of course, reap rewards for society. But our potential cannot be reached without effort from governments worldwide to level playing fields. Governments has the responsibility for creating enabling environments for enterprises of all sizes and sectors to develop, create jobs, and pursue technological innovation and cooperation. Together, sound governance and policies to reduce barriers of international trade and investment is the path to open and, most important, create path out of poverty. The Business for Peace Awards help us consider our definition of what is business success. The 7 winners of the Business for Peace Award are examples to us all of how business, women and men, can develop their businesses while remaining socially and financially responsible. I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate the 7 winners of the award for demonstrating determination and leadership in a challenging world and for helping us to take a small but very significant step closer to world peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Gupta, for your excellent introduction to our debate. If technology is now with us, I am hoping to introduce Dr. Jeremy Rifkin, who is joining us from Washington, D.C. in the United States.
Oh, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Wonderful to see you, Mr. Rifkin. Do you hear us loud and clear?
I do, and I've been listening very intently to the first talk.
Excellent. So thank you so much for joining us. And let me now introduce you because you really deserve introduction. Mr. Rifkin is president of the Foundation on Economic Trends and the author of no less than 17 best-selling books on the impact of scientific and technological changes on the economy, the workforce, society, and the environment. His books have been translated into more than 30 languages and are used in thousands of universities, corporations, and government agencies around the world. His most recent books include The Empathic Civilization, The European Dream, The End of Work, and The Age of Access. Jeremy Rifkin has been advising the European Union leadership at the highest levels. He is continuing to advise European countries on the highest governmental levels, and he's now taking time to advise us here present on the importance of ethics in international business and economic relations. Ms. Rifkin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. Let me start, if I may, on a somber note, which I hope will be a liberating reflection. We've had 2 seminal events in the last 2 years, which I believe signal the end game for the great industrial revolution based on fossil fuels. Let me take you back to July 2008. You'll recall that month the price of oil hit $147 a barrel on world markets. And prices went through the roof across the entire supply chain, from basic goods like commodities like rice and wheat to petrol for the car. And the reason is everything in this civilization is based on fossil fuels. We grow most of our food in petrochemical fertilizers and pesticides. Virtually all of our construction materials, from cement to plastic, are petrochemical based. Almost all of our pharmaceutical products are still made out of petrochemicals. Our synthetic fiber for clothes, our power, transport, heat, and light. We've been living off the carbon deposits, if you will, of the Jurassic Age, and we built a great, short-lived civilization on those remains. But when oil hit $147 a barrel, prices went up across the entire supply chain, speculation came in, and purchasing power plummeted. The entire economic engine of the Industrial Revolution shut down in July of 2008. What I'd like to suggest to you, that was the economic earthquake. The collapse of the financial market 60 days later, that was the aftershock. My colleagues are still dealing with the aftershock because if we had to deal with the earthquake, we'd have to actually move from denial to acknowledgement and realize we are in an end game for the great industrial revolution based on fossil fuels. We've hit what I call peak globalization at 147 a barrel. That's an end game. The reason I say this is because of a study on peak oil per capita. Do not confuse this with global peak oil production. They're two different things. Global peak oil production is controversial, but global peak oil per capita is not. It actually occurred in 1979 at the height of the auto age. BP did the study. Others have confirmed the study since. If we were to distribute all the oil that we knew we had on hand in 1979 to everyone living on the planet at that time, that would be the most oil we could have per person. We found more oil since then, but population rose quicker. So if we were to distribute all the oil reserves we now know we have on hand in the world to 6.8 billion people, there's simply less to go around. So when China and India made a bid at a 10% growth rate in the last decade to bring a third of the human race into the second industrial revolution, the demand pressure against the supply of oil was so great that oil started moving to $50, $60, $70 a barrel. Once it hits 80, prices shoot up and speculation comes in. And finally, the engine shut down at 147 a barrel. This is peak globalization. Right now, we're trying to restore inventories. So there's a little bit of tepid growth going on around the world. But let me suggest to the business leaders here that as soon as we try to regroup and grow at the same rate we were growing before 2008, prices start to go over 80 a barrel, which is happening right now. And every time we try to regroup, we will peak at 140, 150 a barrel, and we'll, I think, begin to realize that we are in deep trouble. The next time this happens, I think there'll be world panic. We'll have to acknowledge that we now have to rethink our civilization. The second major event occurred in December 2009 in Copenhagen. World leaders from 194 countries come together to address the entropy bill for the industrial age. If you're an engineer, you know you cannot escape the second law of thermodynamics, the entropy law. This is not a metaphor. We exhumed all those carbon deposits. We built the energies, the technologies, and the infrastructure of a civilization based on carbon, but we spewed massive amounts of CO2 and methane and nitrous oxide into the atmosphere. And now our scientists tell us that we are faced with an unparalleled crisis. We may be imperiling our human race and seeing a mass die-off of life on this planet between the mid-century and the end of this century. So the UN panel on climate change says that we're likely to see at least a 3-degree rise in temperature on this planet in this century. It could go much higher. But to put this in perspective, if we only go up 3 degrees, it takes us back to the temperature on Earth 3 million years ago in the Pliocene. Different flora, different fauna, different ecosystems. And the key here is the hydrological cycle. For every 1 degree centigrade that the temperature rises on this planet, the atmosphere absorbs 7% more precipitation. That means the entire hydrological cycle is destabilized. More floods, more droughts, more wildfires. Our ecosystems cannot migrate and change quick enough to catch up to the change in the frequency and the changes in the hydrological cycle. It's as simple and profound as that.